Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at Anna Margarida Matos' Not Today, Undoing Home Repairs. This is a book that recently came out from Field Mouse Press. I have previously reviewed Anna's book Grapefruit. This is a small little book that's part of the Cootie Cooties Mini Koosh line. And I was really taken by this book for the just look of it, for the visual formal play throughout the book with the language of comics, the deconstruction of the visual elements of the language of comics, its kind of thoughtful philosophical approach to life and comics in general. So really excited by this artist and this work, and then saw that she had a much larger thought. I don't want to say a more complete thought, but a much larger thought being put out with Not Today. And I was so really excited about that. Had also started having some conversations with Anna on Instagram, her just saying thanks for the review or whatever. And, like this is an artist I just think is really philosophically interesting right now. So really excited for this book. Actually, right before I'm filming this review, I just finished an interview with Anna. So really excited for you all to see that as well. So that will be being posted tomorrow, and you'll be able to hear a pretty good dense conversation between me and Anna about her work, which I really appreciate, and just further confirmed my impression that she's going to continue to be an important character for the future of the medium and deserves all that support. But let's take a look at what is Not Today, Undoing Home Repairs, and why is it I like this work so much. This book started as just Anna writing in her diary during the COVID lockdown. Basically, this was a project she was working on during COVID lockdown, and is kind of a journal that captures her thoughts and time during that period of lockdown. As an art student, she was an art student at the time at a university in Lisbon in Portugal. And the book goes through being like an online student and then like transitioning back into in-person classes and stuff. Not so much a book about being a student. That's just the context for the time and life of the author. So you have all of these down here, and then at some point Anna decided that there could be a book out of that, so then started creating extra content to go on top of these little cutout pieces from her journal, and formulated the book that way. The book really is a kind of multi-layered exploration of the idea of identity and self, and especially the way that people were forced to face themselves, I think, during COVID lockdown. And in talking to Anna and just reading through the book, I think we were both in agreement that artists were particularly, I think most artists were aware that we're particularly well suited to lockdown life, but even then, like a good chance for introspection. So that's kind of the setting for the book. It's someone's introspective working out of really difficult ideas during the time of lockdown, so influenced by those conditions. Another metaphor that's running all throughout this is the one of the camera lens, because the core theme of the book is identity, self-identity, and things. So you have like a picture like this that shows a self-portrait drawing of Anna, by Anna, of herself, seen through the distorted lens of the camera. She's also just asking questions about self-portrait and identity. So on the sides you have these hand-drawn, hand-lettered, but they're also images in the piece. They're Google searches. Why does a man paint himself? Why does a woman paint herself? Looking at the identity and self-portrait through gender lenses, and as many lenses as possible, basically. So those are the main metaphors running through the book. There's also the story of this very old camera that Anna has found, and she's trying to get someone to help her fix it so she can actually use it, and using that camera as the metaphor, for having a filter on your vision, filter on your perceptions, the kind of epistemic access issue of knowledge, where you have access to not even full access to the inside of your own head, but other people, you're like a camera, And so she just has this visual metaphor of fixing the camera as a way of also kind of grappling with the idea of portraiture, and portraiture as a metaphor, just general for grappling with your own identity. And so that's kind of like another subplot, I guess, in the book, if you could call it that. So that's like kind of the conceptual themes running throughout the book. Unlike with Grapefruit, this is too big of a book and too rich for me to go through and like page by page deconstruct the deconstruction and talk about it that way. But I do want to show, within the scope of that general outline, some of the things that I really appreciated. Visually, I think there's a lot of really exciting things going on in this book, ways of structuring images and words on a page or across a spread that look very different than a lot of other comics I've got. Images like this where Anna's constantly again deconstructing the form of like, here's all this chatter but nothing's in the balloons. There's just visual exploration and play on every page. Particularly, anyone who's watched the channel for any amount of time knows that I like pages with lots of rhythmic little panels and subdivisions like this. So some really visually compelling things here, and also being like formally conscious of like, look, here's a flat plane, and then this is treated three-dimensionally in perspective, like shelves and things. And so you can see where Anna's work has like really strong technical chops behind it, and then you'll see other moments, where she's really willing to just kind of cut and paste or scribble real quick with the pencil if that's what's going to communicate the idea best. So just real masterful knowledge of when to work in what mode, and really also how to create a look for each page, like again with these rhythmic units creating a flow throughout a book, but a set of pages that looks very different from the page before it. And every page is like that, being able to switch styles, diagrammatic things, drawing with pencils, blah, blah, blah. It keeps the book really visually engaging and fresh throughout, but also has like, as I'm flipping through it, you're never like, oh my God, this is a different artist. Has a very distinctive visual style as well. In terms of the reproduction of the book and stuff, that's all really well done. One thing that absolutely baffles me is that this was, I guess, originally all written and published in Portuguese because it's being translated. But this all looks like, this is hand done. So I don't know if Anna had to, I meant to ask her that during the interview. But I don't know if she had to re-hand letter all of this to make the new book, or if, I don't know. That's a production thing. I don't know if Victor Martins went through and in the translation also did all the lettering. There's nothing in here that said that, and I forgot to ask Anna. But a hell of a job for whoever went through and re-lettered the book, because it all is like hand lettering on everything, and then these journal entries had to have been, this is how it looked in the book. They were cut out of a journal, so they would have had to mimic that. And I'm not sure how all that went. Like I said, I forgot to ask. There's a lot in here about perception as well, because obviously perception is like our viewpoint. It's part of what creates the sense of self, is I see the world from this point of view, whether that be actually in perspective or in terms of like ideological perspectives that you hold. So going to like the idea of a camera obscura and showing some kind of older conceptions of how consciousness worked, that like I'm this self-contained, you have like John Searle's Chinese box, where my consciousness is all the operations that happen in the box, and then I have an input-output hole or whatever. So like I'm the box. Well, actually there's reality. I'm the filter, and then like my reality is everything in my head inside of that box. It's still like a kind of reasonable visual metaphor for what's going on, but focusing on like us being at the filter rather than us being the thing inside of the box. That's more of our experience reality. I really like that. So there's a lot of these very heady philosophical ideas that are represented. This is a very succinct representation of that. It says it quicker than I did talking about it. So setting that up, like this idea of getting into understanding the inside of your own head, understanding the world outside of your own head because of that, the world inside your head, what's going on in other people's heads, all as components to forming and maintaining an identity. There's some really good bits of writing in the journals. These have the freshness of someone trying to figure, someone communicating to themselves, but in not such an insular, it's not just like, oh, today I went out and had lunch, not that kind of diary comic, but someone really musing to themselves, waxing philosophical to themselves. And so you get a lot of really nice insights in there, particularly like this one. Let's go back to, quote, reality. 1 in every 3 health professionals shows severe levels of burnout. Also, 54.6 of interviews reported an elevated loss of self-fulfillment, and 33.7 revealed feeling an elevated level of depersonalization. So one of the things Anna's doing is collecting a lot of data and then using that as like, this is what's going on in the world, and then comes up with like this little statement afterwards of how she's processed it. So if this is all the data, if the people who studied and know how to take care of us are not well, how are we going to get better? Who will help them? That's obviously COVID era stuff, but it's a much deeper question and a really harsh truth that, of course, landed even more harshly for me because of everything that me and Tori have gone through with her, like almost 2 years now of struggling, being disabled because of long COVID. And we've seen that firsthand, the toll it took on the professional caretakers. And, that's just a really harsh truth that those people don't know anymore either. And that's pretty terrifying. So just lots of observations, not only about self and philosophical things like that, but about the world and dealing with the world as it exists now. And this is coming from someone who was still in their 4-year degree at the time they were writing this. So young, intelligent, educated, informed person looking at the world. This is about as fresh of a perspective on someone who this is the world that they're becoming an adult in and how that affects their perception. I think that's also a really important component of this work, in seeing that viewpoint and understanding it. There are some really cool, what I call poetics of form or comics formalisms in here that also add to the meta-ness of the book. So you have here like this drawing that could be a separate art project where Anna's exploring identity as like this box that she's constructing together, kind of like this little fold-up drawing, and is obviously making a number of these. There's other images in the book where there's a number of these. So integrating probably a different art project into this. But then as you flip the page, so that was on Friday the 26th, on Sunday the 28th, a lot of these drawings here are obviously also diaristic, and like this drawing was done in Anna's room with her books and her computer. And then this drawing here is a hand-done drawing of the user interface for an image being scanned, and that's her scanning the page from 2 days ago. So the book also becomes self-reflexive and self-reflective in the sense that it's starting to unpack its own making process, that there's a feedback loop in all of this. And talking to Anna also, she said that this stuff was being done about a month after any given piece of writing. So she's having a conversation between present, past, and future selves. And that's visually represented in the book very, very clearly by like, here's the thing that I did on the 26th, and then on the 28th, I'm scanning it and working on turning it into a piece of comic page, and also probably dealing with some other art projects. So bringing multiple parts of the self together is really interesting. Again, a page like this, I wonder about the translation. There's so much of this image is constructed out of the lettering. I don't know how much of this would have had to be redone, but power to you all for doing that, whoever did that. Some more really just formally inventive pages in terms of what comics can be and look like. Brandon and Sean and I all really love games in comics, so it's really cool to see like having a crossword puzzle in here. And also just someone who obviously, again, in talking to Anna, but I would have got this even without talking to her, someone who is aware of design as well, like book design, and thinking about the whole book as the kind of container for the project, and that's all part of the piece. Really having things that come from that language of graphic design, magazine design and stuff influencing how, or even just book design in general, influencing how a comic is put together. I really think that's cool, and I would love to see more of that crossover. There's another piece of writing I really like here that I didn't get a chance to to talk to Anna about, but I still want to comment on it. On Wednesday the 10th, I don't know what month this is. It says, draw only what you see and not what you think you see. And she's putting that in there, I think, because that's something that we tend to say a lot in art drawing classes, especially, and I'm totally guilty of saying it as well. I'm constantly trying to get the students out of their cartoon brain, which is drawing what you know about something, the icon of use. You know, like if I was going to draw a ladder, and Anna's drawn them here like as a trained artist who knows how to see what it really looks like, not what she thinks about a ladder. But like if I gave it to a student, they would draw, you know, the mental representation of how you use a ladder, which is just like that. There's no perspective or anything in it, and that's how they draw everything. And so you teach them the way out of that, which is to learn what you see, like retinal input, rather than what you think you see, which is how you use stuff. And then Anna goes on to say, in drawing, as in comics, one wants to suggest a figure, hint at a story, instead of describing every little bit of what happens. Or how to draw is to know how to see well. That's also like this thing that I teach a lot, is that when I'm teaching drawing, I'm not teaching students skills with their hands, I'm teaching them how to see. And so she's pointing out at that like training thing. And then says it's making a direct connection between the eyes and the pencils as though it was an extension of one's body. And that is very much what I'm trying to teach my students, is how to let your system do the work for you and get your concepts out of the way. But in that draw only what you see and not what you think you see, I feel like I'm actually also training students to draw less realistically, in a sense. I call it the sin of teaching drawing. Is that's not how you see the world in an operational sense. That's not how you walk around the world. And I'm teaching students to see the world as if it's broken. You know, that's only the way you see the world, when something breaks and you're trying to fix it. And I often feel bad about that. So seeing that in here, and her kind of struggling with that as like something she's heard, you know, the benefit to the direct connection between the eyes and the pencil, which is a great thing, getting your mind out of the way, but also, you know, that you're losing something in doing that. And yeah, I really appreciate these thoughts. This is definitely, as I always say, art school coming to comics, rather than the Dan Clowes, Chris Ware comics going to art school. The camera, obviously, here's some more where you get these nice little like how-to illustrations, almost like these descriptive illustrations of how to do take something apart, put something back together. IKEA magazines, or IKEA like put together IKEA manuals. That's the word I'm looking for. IKEA manual as comic is something else that's in here. And again, you can see Anna's like extremely talented and extremely well educated in accurate portrayal of things, but she also has a diagrammatic sense of like making sure that even though it is represented in perspective and stuff, like it still maintains its iconic value, communicative value as well. And so really, you know, kind of powerful on all of these skills that you need to be powerful for a cartoonist. Some more really cool visuals. Break again, she seems really to dislike the boundary of the word balloon. That's something in all of her work. And then playing just with form, again, playing with perspective, playing with these diagrams, how these lead to understanding. So that's baked in through all the book. And then even just like putting a constant sense of experimentation into the work, that the work kind of remains open. You have here this entry that says, would I be smarter if I learned how to write with my left hand? Perhaps. Just like a stray thought that she had. And obviously, if you look at the lettering, you know this one is her writing with her left hand. So that's on like Monday the 19th. And then many days later, at the end of the book, we're now into a different month entirely. So almost a month later, on Monday the 17th, it looks like, of May. So this other one must have been in April. You can see, based on the lettering style, that Anna is still coming back and trying to write left-handed at some point. So like it's fun to see this experiment that I don't think resolves itself within the span of the book. Like as far as I know, this is something she still might be doing, and that's still hitting at that core of identity. Like, look, if I try to add a new skill, how does that change me? If I try and express myself with a different limb and have to fight through the challenges of that, how does that change? Input in, input out, right? And like input in is like, okay, I got to learn how to control this new thing. So it's really cool to see someone where this book is obviously it's a piece in and of itself, but it's also a document of a more ongoing process of self-exploration. I think that's what I take away from Anna's work, and also the idea that probably in the end, as this single individual goes on to really, if she continues to make books and continues to make them in this vein and this thoughtful, you'll have like the evidence of someone's growth in front of you over the course of a number of books, which is always my favorite thing with an artist or a writer of any sort, musician, any creative person. I like looking at a body of work, a career, to really understand someone. And I think because of things like this, where there's obviously a lot that's not in the book that's going on that informs the book, there's a life project playing out here that the book has given me a glimpse into, and I think that's really cool. And then as COVID lockdown ends and Anna's able to go back to class and stuff, the book ends. That's like the cap in on the book, because it seems like the project was to do this until COVID's over and then be done. So I like at the end that now it's like, okay, well, we're back, and I was working about a month ahead of time. These are, I'm back in class though, so project's over, but these are the things that I was writing up till there. That's kind of what I took away with from that. And that leaves it to that open-ended, like, hey, look, here's all the days that I still haven't filled in. And then maybe like skipping over some things to, again, I don't know what months these all are, but that open-endedness, that the project doesn't end there, that the self-reflection doesn't end there, that it's an ongoing life project. I think this book conveys that very well. And the idea that this book kind of works as a camera or a mirror for the reader to think about themselves in a little bit more complicated way. I think it's obviously being used by Anna also as a way of, like, any time that you're trying to understand yourself and you put a piece of yourself out in a creative product, any kind of response you get back is also data for, seeing others see you as a way to understand the self. So the book kind of has that camera mirror-like function that's built into it. So this is a very like tightly woven conceptual project in terms of like everything at every level informing itself, but also it's not tightly woven in the sense that it says you got to think this way or whatever. It's just posing questions. So I think really, this is about as good as art can get, where every choice leads to and points to the theme of the whole, but also leaves enough room for individual interpretability. Also, is great on every level, like great on like a pure writing standpoint, great on the way it's structured, great on the way it's drawn, great on the experiments. There's a lot of different critical outlooks you could come to the book to with and looking for, and it would be successful on most metrics. So that's really, really cool. And then at the end, there are obviously, since this is something that was done during lockdown and it was done in Portugal, there are cultural references about food and whatnot that we may not know. So in the back, there's this extra bit of information where it's like, any of the food that's being described or cultural things that we may not be aware of as English language readers kind of get some little notes in the back. So that's also really cool. Anything that's both entertaining, educational, thoughtful, and informative is high up on my list of work. So very, very excited, obviously, about Anna Margarida Matos' work. Both of these books I found very enriching. And like I said, we had a extremely enriching conversation as well that will be up tomorrow. So please do yourself and the medium a favor and go get yourself copies of Grapefruit and Not Today by Anna Margarida Matos. And then please come back tomorrow for a nice deep conversation with the author of these books. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga, so that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival parade, and he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are, and we could not recommend this book more.